The notice taped to my front door felt like a prank at first. Overnight, a shiny chain link gate had appeared across the worn path from my backyard to the beach. My beach! I stood there with my coffee, my jaw practically in the sand, staring at the padlock like it had just insulted my family. The note was typed and formal. Access to the beach via this lot is a violation of coastal preservation policy. Gate installed accordingly. It was signed by the president of the Homeowners Association. That name alone made my blood pressure spike. She was the classic neighborhood tyrant. Pastel visor, permanent clipboard, a voice that could cut glass. I'd lived here for 5 years, long enough to know she didn't care about preservation. What she cared about was control. If her toy poodle couldn't walk past it, she wanted it gone. The problem was, this lot wasn't part of the association. It was mine, bought with the house. The path had been used for decades, grandfathered in through a private easement. It wasn't association land, but she never let facts get in the way of a power trip. I drove straight to their office, a converted guest house behind the president's own home, complete with fake columns and a flag that looked permanently installed. I didn't knock. Inside, she was tapping at a tablet, like she was running a military operation. "You have 2 minutes," I said. "Take the gate down." She didn't look up. "Your beach path is an eyesore and a liability. The association has full authority to restrict dangerous access." "Except you don't," I said, stepping closer. "This lot isn't association land, never has been." She finally glanced up, eyes narrowed. "We updated the community map last month. It's common area now. We voted. Simple majority." "You can't vote to steal private property." She stood, brushing non-existent lint from her sleeve. "I suggest you review the governing documents, if you can read legal language, that is." I left before I said something I'd regret. Back home, I dug out the deed, the easement, everything. I made copies, filed a complaint with the county, and called my lawyer. But I knew her well enough to sense she wouldn't back down. She acted like she owned the whole neighborhood. The next morning, I found a citation on my windshield. Unauthorized use of association property. Fine, $500, signed by her. That's when I decided I wouldn't just fight back. I would end it. I started digging in the records department at City Hall. After 2 days, I found something she'd clearly never checked. The association didn't own the private road leading into the neighborhood. It still belonged to a defunct developer's company that had never transferred ownership. That company had gone bankrupt years ago, and now the road was for sale, dirt cheap. I made the call and bought it. She had gated off my beach access. Now I owned the only road into the neighborhood. The following week, the paperwork was finalized in a dull office with flickering lights. I transferred the deed to a holding company and waited. Not out of kindness, out of strategy. I wanted her to make the next move. She didn't disappoint. 3 days later, a crew in neon vests was unloading lumber and orange cones near the entrance. I walked over. The foreman looked up. "You the association guy?" "Not even close." He squinted. "We're putting in a kiosk and an arm gate. They've got a permit." I pulled a folded sheet from my pocket. "This is the deed to the road you're standing on. It's private property. You're trespassing." He read it, looked at his crew, then back at me. "We were told this was association maintained." "That's what they want you to believe? But unless you have written permission from the owner, which is me, you're going to have a legal problem." He handed the paper back. "Understood. We'll pack up." That afternoon, I installed 2 metal posts at the entrance and chained them together. I added a sign, "Private Road. No unauthorized access." The next morning, the association board held an emergency meeting. I watched from across the street as residents filtered in and out of her garage like agitated ants. A few hours later, she came marching up my driveway, flanked by 2 board members. A retired insurance adjuster who still wore his old badge on a lanyard, and a woman known for handing out warnings about mailbox colors. She didn't bother with hellos. "You're interfering with community operations," I'm protecting my property, I said. You've created a hostile situation. Residents can't get deliveries. Emergency vehicles could be delayed. Then maybe the association shouldn't have tried to build a gate on land it doesn't own. The retired adjuster stepped forward. We contacted the county. That road has always been part of the neighborhood. Not legally, I said. The original developer never transferred the title. The county records prove it. The other board member crossed her arms. You can't hold the entire neighborhood hostage over a personal vendetta. I kept my voice low. I didn't start this. You built a gate on my land. You issued a fine for walking on my property. Now you're pretending to manage a road you don't own. If you keep pushing, I'll escalate. Her lips pressed into a thin line. This isn't over. That night, I installed motion-activated cameras at each end of the road. I wasn't taking chances. I knew her brand of desperation. The footage proved useful faster than expected. The next morning, the recording showed two people in dark clothing loosening the chain and setting it aside. By sunrise, a moving truck had come and gone. I downloaded the footage and called the sheriff's department. Two deputies arrived within the hour. I showed them the video and the deed. The older deputy watched it twice. You recognize either of them? I have a feeling the association knows exactly who they are. The younger deputy flipped through my paperwork. This all checks out. The road is private. You have the right to restrict access. So what happens now? I asked. We'll open a case. Tampering with private property is a misdemeanor. If the association hired them, that's conspiracy. We'll talk to the board. I nodded. You might want to start with the president. She's not exactly subtle. That night, I got my first visitor, a neighbor from two houses down, a quiet man who mostly kept to himself, knocked holding a flashlight and a six-pack. I heard what you did, he said, with the road. He handed me a beer. They tried to fine me for having a flagpole in my yard. Said it was a visual obstruction. My son's in the Navy. I didn't reply, letting the silence speak. He nodded slowly. They've been running this place like a little kingdom. You're the first person who's pushed back. I cracked open the beer. I'm just getting started. By the end of the week, I wasn't alone. A retired contractor offered to help reinforce the gate. A nurse gave me a folder of past association citations that didn't match county records. Even the mailman stopped to tell me she'd tried to reroute deliveries for so-called aesthetic reasons. I compiled everything. I wasn't just fighting for my property anymore. I was building a case. Then, the certified letter came, bearing the association seal. It was a cease and desist order, threatening civil litigation for obstructing a community access point. I scanned it and sent it to my lawyer, a woman who specialized in taking such boards apart. Her reply came within the hour. This letter is garbage. They have no claim. They've opened themselves to a countersuit. I called her. How far can we push this? She didn't hesitate. Far enough to make them wish they'd never touched your gate. That weekend, I held a neighborhood meeting in my backyard. Over 30 families came. I laid it out clearly. I own the road. I have legal proof. The association has overstepped repeatedly. But this isn't just about me. If you've been fined for things not in the bylaws or pressured or threatened, I want it documented. People stepped forward. One woman had been told she couldn't park in her own driveway because her car was too old. A single dad was fined for letting his kid's skateboard ramp sit on the lawn for more than a day. A couple received a warning for hosting a barbecue without prior culinary disclosure, whatever that meant. We collected affidavits. We pulled the original bylaws and compared them to the altered versions she'd pushed through last year. Turns out she'd forged 3 board member signatures to pass amendments, giving her unilateral authority over fines and property access. My lawyer drafted a formal complaint to the State Housing Commission, attaching every altered document, every false citation, and the footage of the tampering. On Monday, the sheriff returned with a warrant. They walked into her house and arrested her for falsifying legal documents and criminal mischief. The two board members with her were issued citations and banned from holding administrative positions. The association board was suspended by the county. I took the chain off the road. I paved it, added lighting, repainted the curbs. Then I installed a new sign: community access restored. Respect private property. Welcome home. The beach path stayed open. So did every driveway, every flagpole, every skateboard ramp. And she never came back. The suspension sent waves through the neighborhood. But the real aftershocks hit after her arraignment. My lawyer called me. They filed 3 felony charges: forgery, unlawful seizure of private property, and obstruction of municipal infrastructure. Infrastructure? They found out she rerouted a drainage line without permits, buried it under a lot to make room for a community garden. It now dumps into a neighbor's crawl space. That's a problem if we get a storm. It already is. The county's environmental office flagged it. They're sending an inspector. That afternoon, a county van arrived. Technicians planted orange flags along the sidewalk. One of them explained the pipe wasn't just out of code, it was illegal. She'd falsified the permit. The whole area could have flooded. As they worked, neighbors gathered. They weren't just watching, they were observing. A woman in her 60s with a sun hat approached me. "I've lived here 22 years, she said. "You've been doing good work. We're organizing a new community council. No formal association, just volunteers. We want transparency. No more secret votes. No more fines for the wrong porch light." "You're filling the void she left," I said. She smiled softly. "We're making sure no one like her fills it again." That night, a deputy called. "She's not getting out." Bail was denied. Judge cited risk of further community harm. He paused. "There's more. We found evidence she'd been siphoning association dues into a personal account, over $70,000 over 3 years. She stole from the residents, used it for landscaping at a family member's house, bought a golf cart, even hired a private investigator to dig up dirt on residents who challenged her." I hung up and walked out back. The beach was calm, the tide low. The gate she'd installed was gone, dismantled by me the day after her arrest. The next morning, I met the new volunteer group in the community park. They called it the Neighborhood Forum. Monthly meetings, everything public, no salaries, just votes. A volunteer handed me a report. It's a summary of the association's budget for the last 5 years. We went through every line she filed. Half of it doesn't match the bank records. My lawyer reviewed it and filed a petition to dissolve the association permanently. The vote came 3 weeks later, overseen by county officials. Out of over 200 households, nearly all voted to dissolve it. It was over, but not for me. 2 days later, I got a letter from a law firm representing the family of the original developer. They'd seen the news and wanted to meet. At a local cafe, a man in silver-rimmed glasses explained his grandfather had built the neighborhood, but died before the company could finish dissolving. The road and other infrastructure was supposed to be gifted to the county, but the paperwork stalled. "We saw you rescued it from being misused," he said. "We're offering to deed the remaining infrastructure, sidewalks, medians, all the common space, to your company. Legally, fully." I didn't answer right away. That night, I walked the road. Kids rode bikes. A couple grilled in their driveway. No one was measuring grass height. For the first time, it actually felt like a neighborhood. I called the volunteer leader the next morning. "I'm thinking about accepting the offer, but not to control anything, just to make sure no one else tries what she did." She didn't hesitate. "Do it." I signed the paperwork that week. Then I set up a public easement agreement, recorded with the county, guaranteeing permanent, unrestricted access for all residents. No future entity could gate it, sell it, or fine anyone for using it. After that, I transferred ownership to a community trust controlled by a rotating board of residents, unpaid and publicly elected. The trust held its first open session under the park pavilion. The beach path stayed open. The gate never went back up. It started with a subpoena, tucked in my mail months later. The district attorney's office requested my presence at a grand jury hearing. They were expanding the case. She hadn't been working alone. Forensic accounting found financial trails leading to former contractors and a real estate broker who had laundered association funds through shell companies, inflating invoices for fake services and splitting the money with her. Over $200,000 had been siphoned from resident dues over 5 years. You were the first domino, the assistant district attorney told me. Your complaint triggered the audit. I testified for over 2 hours, providing everything: dates, copies of footage, recordings. The grand jury returned 7 indictments. That weekend, I was invited to a potluck at the volunteer leaders' home. About 30 people came. One of the volunteers had dug deeper. That broker was trying to buy up homes at reduced prices from residents she'd fined into financial stress. It's real estate fraud. The DA is adding it to the charges. Later, sitting on the back steps, a neighbor said to me, "They thought no one would notice, that they could keep tightening the screws until people left or fell in line." They underestimated how fed up we were, I said. She looked toward the marsh. I think they underestimated you. The indictments led to arrests within the week. The news made the neighborhood a symbol of a community that fought back and won. Then, the county commissioner asked to meet. She thanked me and explained my actions, had exposed a network affecting other neighborhoods. Then, she opened a folder. We'd like to formally designate the beach path as a protected community easement. County maintained. Access is guaranteed forever. The land stays private, but no one can obstruct it again. I had my lawyer review it. It was airtight. I signed. In the months that followed, the neighborhood changed in subtle but seismic ways. Volunteer committees handled landscaping and events. No one got fined for a garden gnome. The road was repaved through a grant and donations. The beach became the heart of the neighborhood again. We held a summer bonfire in July, no permits needed. As the sun dipped below the tide line, the neighbor who'd first brought me a beer stood and raised his drink. "To the guy who bought the road," he said. Everyone laughed and echoed the sentiment. I just nodded and took it in. Later, walking back along the path, I passed the spot where the gate had stood. Nothing remained, just dune grass and the whisper of waves. The community didn't just recover, it evolved. People shared tools, organized cleanups, held porch concerts. We had no president, no bylaws, no fines. Just a common understanding. Respect the space, respect each other. Speak up when something's wrong. The legal cases eventually led to convictions. She was sentenced to several years in prison. Others received varying sentences. Restitution was ordered. Some residents who had been forced out returned, helped by community fundraising. One evening, at a trust meeting, the volunteer leader handed me a hand-carved wooden plaque. It read simply, "Guardian of the Shoreline." I didn't hang it up. I placed it on a bench near the trailhead, under an old pine tree. Let it be a reminder not of what I did, but of what we refused to let happen again. And for the first time in years, the neighborhood truly lived up to its peaceful name. No fences, no fear, just the sound of waves, the scent of salt in the air, and the quiet satisfaction of a community that had reclaimed itself. One step, one document, one locked gate at a time.